Ruth. That's from the plane dynamite.
Yeah.
Ruth, chapter 3, verse 1. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest with thee, that it may be well with thee? After the harvest season was finished, Naomi sought an opportunity to form a social relationship that had cultural and economic ramifications. Like a good Jewish mother.
Last half of that.
Yeah. Naomi sought an opportunity to form a social relationship that had cultural and economic ramifications or advantages both to Ruth and to Naomi. Like a good Jewish mother, she sought to play matchmaker by trying to find a home for Ruth where she would be protected and provided for, namely the home of Boaz, her godly relative. You've seen Fiddler on the Roof, the movie? Yeah? Oh, you have it.
Oh, yeah.
You found a nice.
Yes. Okay, kind of think of that Jewish mother kind of, matchmaking kind of world. Verse number 2. And now is not Boaz of our kindred with whose maidens thou was? Behold, he went with barley tonight in the threshing floor. Reminding Ruth that Boaz was the man with the character and the credentials and the resources to give her the standing, that she needed to become a full member of ancient Israelite society. Naomi suggested that Ruth take the initiative and to meet him at the central gathering point for the citizens of Bethlehem during the harvest season. The threshing floor. The central gathering point.
Why couldn't Naomi's son give her the same standing? Was it because she didn't have any children?
Exactly, because her two children are dead.
Okay.
So since her two children are dead, right, she doesn't have anyone to give her that standing that she desperately desired.
Okay, so motherhood is basically the standing?
Yeah, she's kind of taking on the role of mother here. Yeah, but the standing she really wants is that cultural and economic standing.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but I thought what we were asking was, why didn't she marry Malon? Malon, whatever his name. Why couldn't just by marriage give her the standing in Bethlehem? And then he's saying, is it because
he's
Ruth
dead.
did not have children?
Right, and because he's dead.
Because
And so Naomi and Ruth don't have anyone necessarily as a safety net.
my question would be, why is it that Naomi says that Ruth needs to make the initiative and not have Boaz?
I'll have to ask her one day, I don't know.
This is just what God wants to.
Maybe that's part of it. Just that kind of matchmaking, chutzpah kind of. I'm a fantastic matchmaker, but no one ever asks me.
You are?
Oh yeah, I can spot good matches and bad matches a mile away.
Well, what do you got for me?
I live up in room 4. I see what happens down there. The peons in the parking lot show up from my palace.
I'm glad that you think of us.
Hey, I got that view too, so.
Huh?
I got that view too, so.
You do, but mine's better, because mine's straight up.
Okay.
Mine would say, give it a couple more years.
Yeah.
Verse 3. Wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy clothing upon thee, and get thee down to the floor. But make not thyself known unto the man until he shall have done eating and drinking. Ruth was to clean up. Well, she just worked in the field, and, oh no, wait, this is sometime after. She's to clean up, anoint herself, i.e. with essential oils, and probably take off her mourning clothes, not M-O-R-N-I-N-G, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G. Her mourning clothes.
How long did they wear those?
I don't know, it's a good question.
7 days.
I'm not sure. She was to take off her mourning clothes and formally present herself to Boaz. This she did in order to signal to him that she, Ruth, was an official representative of the household of Elimelech and Naomi. And since she's portraying herself as an official representative of the house of Elimelech and Naomi, she is a potential candidate for marriage. Verse 4. And it shall...
I would like to before you move on. By what you just said, is this what all moms did with their daughters?
Well, we don't know. All we know is...
Is this a practice that you've seen?
That's a good question. We don't know because the Bible doesn't really give us a lot of data on that. We just kind of got to read between the lines, you know?
Because Ruth is not necessarily acting as a daughter here, right? She's acting as kind of the son, somehow getting a son thing back into the family.
Can you say that again?
I don't know.
That's okay.
She's not strictly acting as a daughter,
Who's
right?
she?
She could be married off to most anybody.
Ruth, exactly. She can be married off to most anybody. She could, because she doesn't have any standing in Israelite society. She's not from a certain clan or tribe or family member, right? She's just a stranger. But since Naomi is of the tribe of Judah, right? Naomi has the sway within Judah to make things happen. And so she sends her to her nephew.
But for her son.
Well,
In a
no,
way,
so
I mean, you know, it's their,
that's part of it. That's part of it for sure, to keep the son's name alive, as it were. Yeah.
I guess I was just wondering if, because she's doing this to keep the son, it's alive, a name alive, but not necessarily, but if Naomi had daughters, would she have done the same with the daughters?
I don't know. I have to ask her. I don't know.
I just thought it was maybe a Jewish thing.
Good question, but I don't know. I don't know everything,
I don't know.
even though I am the police chief.
Now I don't know where you were with what you were saying.
Verse 4. Verse 4. And it shall be when he lieth down that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie, and thou shalt go in and uncover his feet, and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. After the evening meal at Naomi's house, Ruth was to locate where Boaz was sleeping, where he was sleeping in the threshing floor. Since many men slept in the threshing floor to protect their investment. And formally present her eligibility to him by lying next to his feet and wrapping herself in his cloak. The average evening temperature in Bethlehem at this time is in the low 60s. In doing so, Ruth would have prompted Boaz to inform her whether or not he was the closest relative of Naomi, and therefore whether or not he had the first dibs on the rights of redemption. And that's where Boaz would have slept, on a stack of wheat or barley, just like that. Verse 5. And she said unto her, all that thou sayest unto me, I will do. Having the highest confidence in Naomi's wisdom and knowledge, wisdom and knowledge of the customs and the mannerisms of what's expected and what's not expected of ancient Israel, the stranger in the strange land vows to execute precisely all of Naomi's instructions. Verse 6. And she went down onto the floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. Every town in ancient Israel had a communal threshing floor. This is the communal threshing floor right outside of Bethlehem. So this is Bethlehem right here. Okay, and you just follow that road right there, and you go up to there. Now, we don't know if this was the threshing floor used in the book of Ruth, but it could have been. So every town in ancient Israel, every single town essentially had one of these communal threshing floors. From around Passover, like I mentioned, from around Passover to Pentecost, that's 70 days in between, everyone in the community, everyone, no matter how great or small, pitched in to reap the bounty of the harvest. While I guess technically like any exposed area of bedrock would be sufficient for a threshing floor, those like this one on a hilltop where the wind could be most efficient and separating the grain from the chaff would be the most favorable. Okay, and this is a wonderful example of the type of threshing floor that we're talking about in this account. Something like that. And you can go there today. It's very easy to get to.
Did they all use it at the same time, or are
The
they?
community? Yeah.
So everybody's field can get stuff in there?
Well, I don't know how socialistic it was. That's a good question, you know. I'm sure there were more than one threshing floor in each field. But at least one. At least one. That's the point. Verse 7. And when Boaz had eaten and drank, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain, and she came softly, and then covered his feet and laid her down. Boaz, in verse number 7, had probably just finished celebrating Shavuot. Shavuot, it means weeks, like the Feast of Weeks. It marks the beginning of wheat harvest. Okay? And Shavuot later, of course, becomes, well, I'll hold that thought. So he's likely just got done celebrating this holiday, this Jewish holiday, the Feast of Weeks, which occurs 7 full weeks after the wave offering of the first fruits of Passover. And you shall count for yourselves in Leviticus 23:15, and you shall count for yourselves from the day after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be completed. 7 Sabbaths. Count 50 days to the, that's called the Omer. Count 50 days, not Homer, Omer. Count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath, then you shall offer a new grain offering to the Lord. This is probably where Boaz is coming from. This is festival. Okay? Now, Shavuot, which is the Hebrew name, is also known by the Greek name Pentecost. Same thing. Because Pentecost, 50 means 50, it's a 50-day interval between the two holidays. Like first fruits, Shavuot, or Pentecost, took place on the day after the Sabbath, Individuals, on this day, were to make an offering. Everyone was to, because this is the time, where the bank accounts are full and the fridges are full. Everyone was to make an offering in proportion to the size of the harvest they had taken in that year. Deuteronomy 6:10. Then you shall celebrate the Feast of Weeks to the Lord your God with a tribute of a free will offering of your hand, which you shall give just as the Lord your God blesses you. It was this day where Boaz is probably coming from, it was a day of sacred assembly in which no work was allowed. The primary focus of this festival was gratitude to God for the harvest. the primary focus of the festival, the Feast of Weeks. Gratitude to God for the harvest. Verse 8. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. In the middle of the night, something made Boaz tremble very exceedingly. That's the word there. When it means it says he's afraid, it means to tremble exceedingly. So he wakes up and he perceives, perhaps by her, when he looks down, perhaps by her hair, or maybe she's wearing a veil, or maybe it's her voice that gives it away, that there was a woman in a position of humble submission at his feet. 93% of communication, friends, is nonverbal. 93% is nonverbal.
Is that a test question?
Verse 9. And he said, Who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth thy handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thy handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. So what in the world is going on here? Verse 9. Ruth asks Boaz to follow the ancient custom, of the Jewish man throwing or placing the corner of the talit or prayer shawl over the head of his betrothed wife to symbolically protect her and cover her with it. Now, the talit is mentioned in Numbers 15, 38 through 41. Speak unto the children of Israel and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a riband of blue, and it shall be unto you a fringe, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them, that you seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you used to go whoring. So, in other words, it has evolved into today, at least. This is, it's a big sheet like that, okay? With a hole, just one hole in the center. Put it over your head, okay? And just rest this way and that way. And as some of you have seen before, it has four corners, and on each of the four corners, right, you have, or on the borders, you have the fringes, where you have little reminders to keep God's commandments. So, like I said, the shape, the size of this object, this article of clothing has evolved over generations, but nevertheless, right? It's supposed to take that and symbolically, she's asking him to symbolically put it over her, like in Ezekiel 16:8. Now when I passed by you and looked on you, behold, your time was the time of love, and the same thing. And I spread my skirt over you, right? That symbolic gesture of protecting and providing, right, your beloved. I never put my skirt over my wife. Verse 10. And he said, Blessed be thou the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast shown more kindness in the latter than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich. Verse 10. Boaz praises her, stating that the family loyalty she has shown in pursuing marriage to the older Boaz, her kinsman, to build up her dead husband's family, was greater than the kindness she had shown by coming to Bethlehem with Naomi a few months earlier. According to Jewish legend, at this time, Boaz is 80. According to legend, Boaz is 80, and Ruth is 40. Good for him. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do thee all that thou requirest. For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. Verse 11. Now, in the order of our English Bible, which is an order based on chronology, our order is based on chronology, Ruth follows Judges. Joshua judges Ruth. Yet, in the logical order of the books of the Hebrew Bible, Ruth is after Proverbs. Proverbs, Ruth. Not Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. Why is Ruth after Proverbs? Ruth is after Proverbs in the order of Jesus' Bible and in the order of today's Hebrew Bible to give a substantial answer to the question in Proverbs 31. Who can find a virtuous woman? Since the only 2 times in the whole Hebrew Bible that phrase is used, virtuous woman, is in Proverbs 31 and Ruth chapter 3. That's why Ruth is after Proverbs in the order of the Hebrew Bible. To give you that substantial answer to the question, who can find a virtuous woman? That's like a quiz question. Verse 12. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman, howbeit there is a kinsman nearer than I. Boaz knew he was the man with the credentials. He was the man with the credentials to give Ruth the standing she desired, but going above and beyond, transcending all of her wishes, he is here in verse number 12 clearly defined as being Torah or scripturally observant. Since there's a family member, a family redeemer for that matter, who outranks him, which according to tradition, was the single brother of Elimelech. According to tradition, the single brother of Elimelech, which would have been an uncle to Ruth.
Can you drop that on?
No. I can tell it to you again, though.
Okay, because I'm getting confused.
Boaz is clearly defined as being scripturally faithful and observant. Because we see that he mentions that there is a family redeemer, someone in their family tree that outranks him with the ability to have the first dibs on marrying Ruth. Now, according to Jewish tradition, that kinsman redeemer is the brother of Elimelech, Naomi's dead husband.
Which would be his father?
Excuse me?
Because wasn't Boaz supposed to be the...
Maybe. The nephew? Maybe.
Or...
It could be. Yeah. But that's just Jewish tradition. Okay? It's the brother of Elimelech. Okay. Verse number 13. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning that if he will perform unto thee the parts of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman's part. But if he will not do the part of a kinsman, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee. As the Lord liveth, lie down until the morning. Now, it's kind of interesting here in the Hebrew text, in the Hebrew scriptures, the first letter, this is not the Hebrew word on the screen, it's just an example, okay? In the Hebrew text, the first letter in the word for tarry, in verse number 13, is written larger than normal, in order to draw attention to the word. Just as there is an unusual mark, there's a couple hundred examples in the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, of letters that are big like that, or unusual marks like that. Now there's also an unusual mark over a word in the narrative of Lot lying with his firstborn daughter, and after he had an incestuous relationship with his daughter, she gave birth to Moab. To Moab. So here you have the first letter in the word Terry in Hebrew is extra large to draw attention to it. And then in the Genesis 19, verses 30 through 38 passage, you have another example there of an unusual mark, maybe to draw attention to these two narratives.
What word was that?
Excuse me?
What word was that, 13?
Terry. Yeah, the first word,
So,
Terry.
Which word is it in Genesis?
I don't know.
Just one of the words.
Yes. It is as if there's some link between these two accounts in Genesis 19 and Ruth-Chapter 3. God in his wisdom brings light out of darkness. He brings about the Messiah, the friend of sinners, through these fallen ancestors. Through an incestuous union, Moab is born, through whose line, 1,000 years later, Ruth was born. Ruth, in turn, through an technically objectionable marriage to Boaz, Deuteronomy 23:3, right? An Ammonite or a Moabite shall not enter the congregation of the Lord. She bore Obed, through whose line 1,000 years later the Son of God was born. Verse number 14. And she lay at his feet until the morning, and she rose up before one could know another. And he said, let it not be known that a woman came into the floor. Ruth spent the night in the threshing floor at Boaz's feet in order to, according to Boaz, right here in verse number 14, to prevent any scandal and to protect both of their reputations. Ruth arose before the break of day.
Wait a second, she
Before
stayed?
the break of dawn.
She left to
That's
save her reputation, or she stayed?
MC Hammer's son. She stayed to protect her reputation.
How does that protect her reputation?
Well, if she at 1 o'clock in the morning is seen walking around, right? That's probably not good. But if she leaves first thing in the morning while everyone's still sleeping, she won't be seen walking around. Or at least she can come up with maybe something of why she's walking around, because that's when you go to work. I don't know. Anyways, she arose before the break of dawn. Oh, that's not MC Hammer, that's Sir Mix-a-Lot. My bad.
Oliver Washington.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Woo-woo!
He's got a nice ghetto mansion, right?
From that one song, huh?
He has a Lamborghini.
From that one song, huh? Good for him. I love America. So she arose before the break of dawn, before anyone could recognize one another, and right, before anyone could recognize one another, it's still dark out, right? There's no street lamps, and was charged that no one could ever know her actions. Let it not be known. Verse 15. Also, he said, bring the veil to the house upon me and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley and laid it on her, and she went into the city. Upon their departure, she brought him her shawl, which she probably used to cover her hair and to cover her face. He filled it with grain and, tied it up or whatever, and then laid it probably on her head or on her shoulder. Then he, not she, mine says she, it's he. Then, right, and she went into the city, it's he. Then he, not she, it's a textual variance. Then he went into the city. That is to say, he likely accompanied her back to the city. Verse 16. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, "Who are you, my daughter?" And she told her all that the man had done unto her. When Ruth returned to Naomi's house early in the morning, she was probably already awake, and immediately inquired a detailed blow-by-blow account of the previous night's events. Ruth relayed the news that this very morning, either Boaz or a nearer kinsman would redeem her. Okay, verse number 17. And she said, "These 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said unto me, Go not empty to thy mother-in-law." In verse number 17, Ruth brought tangible evidence. She brought tangible evidence that she had found favor in Boaz's eyes by presenting the gift of grain to Naomi. In truth, the gift was to convey to Naomi. That Boaz had compassionate concern, real compassionate concern for Ruth's well-being, and was determined to see her protected and provided for, whether through himself or through the nearer kinsman. One more verse in the chapter. Verse number 18. Then she said, "Sit still, my daughter, until I know how the matter will fall. For the man will not be at rest until he have finished the thing this day." Verse number 18, Naomi exhorted Ruth to be patient, and probably to stay out of sight until the matter was settled. Knowing the diligence and the honor of Boaz, and perceiving the kindness he bestowed upon Ruth, Naomi knew that Boaz would not relax until he knew if he could have Ruth or not. All right, let's take 7 minutes.